let us start here. Okay. All right. Notice what this disclaimer says. Okay. These are amateur videos. Okay, which they're amateur from the concept that because this wording is very specific, and as you know, I have a way of words. Especially if you've read anything like from my books or anything that I post um, online, like YouTube or post in LinkedIn. Okay, I'm very specific with my words. Okay, so when I call these amateur videos, meaning that I have not been baptized from a training company, okay, that will classify me as a trainer, okay? I have identified myself as a trainer, and that is reality, okay? I teach Cisco topics, okay? I have been teaching topics that, since I was 16 years old, I guess, or 15, okay? I started off teaching myself car stereos. That was a hobby of mine. Okay, never charged because, like I said, um, you know, you got what you got. Okay, my cosmetic aspect, like making things seamless and uniformed, like putting a cover over a speaker. There was always going to be some space there. Maybe as I was cutting the metal, I wasn't doing it cleanly. Okay, so why charge you so you can ask for your money back? You have no recourse. All right, so I taught myself cars. Okay, um, how to work on my own car. All right, but that had a motivation to it. The motivation was to save money because $100 to me was like half my paycheck back when I was 16 years old. Not to mention the fact it kind of had like a little estasia going on because my father was one of like the mechanic. Okay, which means even when the dealers would condemn that car, he will uncondemn them. Okay, the hardest things that were impossible to fix, he would actually be in his yard, which was my grandmother's yard actually, because my grandmother was my mother's mother. Okay, my family. All right, he had his family, but he will always spend his time in my grandmother's yard working on cars and doing things like that. Okay, all right. Eventually, he ended up owning. Before he died, eventually he owned a used car lot. Okay, because he was able to fix these cars that people had condemned, and you got to think of that about that. Nobody wants these cars. All right, he takes them and he fixes them. Okay, now he has a means of income. Okay, because of his skill set. All right, he didn't chase the money, right? He used his skill set. Okay, so there was the nostalgia of learning how to work on my own car, and I succeeded heavily. Okay, with my own stuff. Sometimes there were things that I could not do on a regular basis, like replacing an axle. Okay, get a Chilton book, read the stuff in the background uh, behind the do's and don'ts of a Chilton book. Okay, and then you go out and buy the tool, and hey, pull the axle out. I was amazed. Okay, all right, and lots of times I have done this. So I will always consider these amateur videos, but let me tell you, guys, even the boys, okay, the big boys, all right, that do these professional videos, okay, hey, yeah, okay, so we'll just leave it at that. So nonetheless, next statement. All videos are unstructured and unrehearsed. Now that's true. Okay, that's 100% true. I do not go back and create a pre-video, right? So the video that I posted moves so smoothly, like I'm like this master person. Okay, now this would be required from a company most likely because they want their videos to be flawless and they want them to be making you look like you are a genius. Okay, well, I don't have time for that. All right, mistakes are part of what we do. They never go away. Okay, all right. I don't care if you're 15, 20 years in the field. Okay, something that you saw 5 years ago, you can't remember what you did, and you're like, man, that's messed up. But it was 5 years ago. Okay, and even from your perspective, you could have thought it was 5 months ago. Time is relevant. Okay, if you don't know what that means, like the theory of relativity, okay, the concept that Einstein was talking about was time is what it is based on your perspective and where you are. Okay, that's why we call it space time, because it's its own single entity. Okay, years ago, okay, I mean decades ago, I would argue with you with the fact that time was its own entity. Okay, and I would have been wrong. Okay, all right, and when I found that out, I was like, wow. Okay, I just don't understand that until I saw a documentation where light had to travel inside and dip inside the curvature that whatever planet was creating or whatever sun was creating or energy it was creating, that warpage. Now that blew my mind, and it gave me a whole new perspective of why space-time was something that was real. Okay, now that relatively brings us back to the same thing, to the next line. Lessons are based on my perception of the technology at the time of the video's creation. Mistakes and false information could be in the videos. You are responsible for your research. Question everything you read, watch, and learn with networking. This is not a disclaimer, all right? Because I never, okay, I can show you how to crack an egg, and because your dumbass goes out there and cracks an egg, okay, or in a certain way that causes you harm, that shit's on you, okay, all right. I'm not so much of a coward, or fear doesn't run my life, okay. I would say coward. It's like I gotta put this disclaimer, right? So when you're watching product reviews, right, they'll say, "Now, don't try this at home." Okay, and or if they give you advice on a particular substance, it was like, well, consult with your doctor. Guys, nobody is going to consult with their doctor every time they want to consume something. Okay, all right. Not to mention the fact most doctors won't have the answer anyway. They're gonna go back into their office, look up their little book, okay, and come back with information that's not even relevant to the question you were asking. Okay. All right, that kind of crap just angers the hell out of me. All right, so this is not a disclaimer. This is a mess. That's why it's played twice in a row. It is a reminder, okay, of what's happening here. All right, I've called myself the network novice for decades. Okay, and I say decades, but I've only been in the field for 15 years, so it can't be decades. But nonetheless. Okay, for years I've been calling myself a network novice. Okay, I call myself a network expert now. Okay, because I have earned that title when I felt like I deserved to be called that. Okay, it was my decision. All right, but you're never gonna call me a master. Okay, because mastering something is totally different than being an expert. Okay. And we got too many things to worry about, in our technology list of things in our field, that mastering anything isn't really going to be there, except like the basics, like uh, uh, enabling EIGRP, OSPF. You've done it 1,000 times. You have mastered that, but still doing that configurations, you are going to come up with something that you haven't seen before. Okay, VPNs. All right, VPNs, man. ASA, this ASA, that damn thing does whatever the hell it wants sometimes. Okay, and things just don't work. Okay, There's a reason why we are needed in this field. Okay, and my videos are there to give you confidence within yourself. Okay, all right. So now I have always called myself. Okay, yeah, I got rid of that annoying thing with the other stuff coming up in Notepad. Oh my god, it was so annoying. Okay, so and that is a setting in Notepad. So let's go over here. Come on, come on. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so I have always said I'm a scientist at heart. Okay, but not a scientist. And you know what's funny? Okay, when you're a young kid, okay, like say 10 years old, all right, and you're thinking about how gravity works just because you're curious, okay, all right, that's not something an average 10-year-old does, okay? So when you go and try to have this conversation with somebody else, like family, it's always family, right? They're the ones that'll tell you you're an idiot. What you're saying makes no sense. In reality, it's not. That's not the case. And when you get older, you start realizing I wasn't an idiot. Matter of fact, my intellect uh, actually is higher than all you guys combined. Yeah, that's family. Okay, but still, nonetheless, 50 years go by, and you start realizing that wow, there's a reason why uh, my childhood it's so much more clear now, and now I know why I was having the issues that I had with you guys because you haven't changed. Where every 10 years, on an average, the average person hits a milestone every 10 years. So that means 10, 20, 30, 40. There are huge things that change in their thought process and who they want to be. Okay? All right? Talk to anybody in their 60s and ask them, did they find that things have really changed in their thought process every 10 years? All right? Okay? Did you think a lot differently when you were 40 than you did 30? Okay? And they'll all tell you yes. It just seems to be a common thing, right? Okay. And this is reality. Now, this is only a reality because it was told to me by an old man. All right. And I was 25 years old. And when I hit 30, I was like, oh my God, he's right. Right. And when I hit 40 and even 50, okay, guys, these are major milestones in my life. Okay, at age 50, I thought I was going to be like this old man and depressed, and I'm telling you, man, I am loving life. Okay, it's like a. Okay, so when I hit 20, that was like life number two. Okay, all right, 30 was like life number. It kind of didn't hit that until probably like 35. Okay, and I kind of found I had a new outlook of life. But goddamn, 50, man, I was like, wow, I'm the happiest I've been in my entire life. All right, I don't know why it happened. It's just like I said, every 10 years. Okay, so now Neil. Let's see if I spell his name right. Uh, I don't know if it's digression or whatever. Okay, all right, Tyson. Today, actually, today, all right, I realized what I've been doing for years, calling myself scientist. I'm sure I'm spelling that wrong, but who cares? Um, Dude, how do you spell scientist? Scientist? Whatever. Okay, I don't care. All right, call me idiot all you want. At heart. Okay? All right? That is what I have described myself as ever since I was a kid. All right? when you start talking about space and stuff like that, someone says, "Wow, man, you know, what are you, a scientist?" No, I'm a scientist at heart. Okay, and I've been that way ever since I can remember. Neil deGrasse Tyson defined. He says, when you are a child and you have this desire to know how things work, okay, all right, when you lose that desire, all right, you are called an adult, all right. If you grow up and never lose that desire, okay, you will become a scientist for profession or remain a scientist at heart. Today I learned that. So now I have a reason, I have a definition and a reason of why what I was saying has been correct for many, 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 many years. I thought nothing. I thought nothing of it. It just seemed to be the right words. Okay, so now let's talk about perception for a second. All right, and that perception is you sitting on Earth. Okay, all right. Here you are. All right, now you decide to go into space. Okay? Actually, you know what? No. Let's do this. You sync your clock, your watch, with your buddy, George. Okay? But George, after, your clock's been syncing and you guys making sure that it stays synced, George decides to move. Okay? And he goes up in space. Okay? Let's say for a day. And when he comes back down to Earth, your clocks are unsync. All right. So if we get our if we get our clocking from a satellite, then how do we get accurate time on Earth? Well, the reason is because this GPS, all right, knows what its perception of time is based on the gravitational pull. And remember, the closer you are to the gravity, the slower your clock runs. So he will have to make calculations every time he sends time down to your clock or syncs your clock that's on your wrist, okay, or around your neck, whatever. Regardless of that, okay, that calculation can always be accurate based on the satellite knowing where it is in space as far as its distance from the center of gravity. Okay? All right, yeah. So the gravity is created by the curvature of space fabric, if you want to look at it as a fabric, but this is the center of gravity. All right? Okay? And you might be floating towards it via the curvature of space, meaning you're kind of like riding on this on this fabric. But okay, this dip in space, which really should be made in a better way here. So here, and we start to dip. Okay? All right? So now, that curvature of space, you're kind of riding on this water slide. Okay? Until you hit this. Now, this is light. Let's say this is light. Light literally has to dip down and go into the and literally ride on that dip, which is amazing because if I just shot, if this is point A and this is point A, and I need to go above this where it missed the dip, okay, this beam of light compared to this beam of light, this is going to win the race, and this one's going to take a lot longer to get to the destination because of that dippage. Now, based on this person up here, George, in space, okay, all right, his concept of time, 1 second is still 1 second, all right, but he's not realizing that his time, from his perspective, okay, is different because his clock is moving faster than Kyle down here, okay, because Kyle's closer to gravity, the source of gravity, okay, all right, where time will always be slower compared to even our satellites in orbit, okay, even going up a mountain, our time is going to change, okay, and the only way to prove that is to synchronize your watch, okay, and stay up on that mountain for a while and see how the time will be different, okay, all right, but remember the key word, perception, okay, all right, nothing changes for your perspective, your perception, but the reality is, okay, during your time wherever you're at, your perception is your perception, okay, that's why I say that during this video, this is my perception of the technology at the moment, okay, all right, now, if you take this word perception, okay, and use it as perception is the reality, okay, what you are doing is you're accepting a term, okay, that allows you to accept the behavior in the office where everyone is pointing the finger and blaming everybody and not focusing on the problem, okay? This is a human being's kryptonite, okay? All right? Never are you going to make me believe that perception is reality, because reality is the reality, okay? Your perception, that's your problem, okay? Now, does that mean that I'm going to do things differently because human beings do this? Not necessarily, okay? But there is like a very faint aura that makes me aware of it, okay? And being self-aware is really well, all right? But if you get caught in this game, you're not doing the job you're supposed to be doing, because you're always trying to make everybody else see your reality, okay, which isn't reality. It's the reality is you're playing a game to make yourself look good, okay? That's the reality, and you're not doing that working, okay? So you're gonna be told this all the time, and you know what? When people tell that to me, I'm just like, you know what? Okay, all right. Now I know what game you're playing, all right. And trust me, I have watched this go so far, okay, where people are so into a soap opera that doesn't even exist, okay, playing this game, okay. And this goes as bad as that person that wants to be the smartest person in the room, okay, all right. Everything that comes out of his mouth is fake. This is not who he is. This is the image he has given to his coworkers, and they eat it up, okay, all right. But reality always sets into play, because at some point you're going to start realizing, okay, that this person is more image and perception than reality, okay? And I don't want you to be that person, okay? All right? Now, the best thing I can say is the better your skills are, you don't have to worry about that game anyway, okay? That's for people who don't really have a skill set and chasing the money. Let them chase the money, okay? All right? Now, life is definitely this, okay? And when you're down here, you just know you're never going to get up again. And trust me, I've been there. We all have. Okay? All right? When you're up here, you think nothing is going to bring you back down here again. Okay? And that's not true. All right? So, let's say you go into business with yourself and you got 3 contracts. Okay? All right? And you are making buku money. Okay? You're making $300K a year. All right? But that's at this point right here. All right? 6 months later, you lose 2 contracts. Right? But here's the interesting thing. Okay? When I hit 40, this was my mission. Lower expenses, increase income. Okay? So, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life. Okay? Alright? Because what really happens with paychecks, okay, and we all been there, alright? We always bring in, let's say, $1,000 a month, but always paying out $1,300, okay? Alright, and that includes food, eating out, going out, okay? Alright, you do these things because you want to feel alive, and working for somebody else and not having anything left at the end of the month after your bills are paid, meaning you're always taking an extra $300, moving over here. You're never paying all your bills on time. You're moving bills around. Okay, and now you owe several people. You're always owing them, and every payment you make never gets you out of the negative of that account. But because you're making payments, your electricity's still on. Okay. All right. The best feeling is having the first time you have $1,000 left over after all your bills are paid. This is a game changer. Okay. All right. And this is a philosophy that I would use. Okay. All right. Increasing your income. Right. Don't chase income. Income is a byproduct. Income will come. Okay, but you get what you pay for, meaning that if your skill set is 0, how do you expect to get paid for it? Okay, all right, you can do that and create that image, but every time something happens, you need somebody to hold that scenario because you're incapable of doing it. And the whole time you created work that you spent working on your persona, if you took 10% of that energy, and I just mean 10%, okay, all right, in a year's time, you could probably double your income as far as technical aspects of your skill set. Because, you know, someone with that skill set could get paid the money that you wish you could get paid. Okay? I'm just saying. All right? So, this rant here is the concept of getting a different perspective of my perspective and your perspective, and how you're going to start paying attention and being self-aware of your perception and making sure that that perception, okay, does not become your priority if you're trying to create an image. Okay, if you're not that smart, just own it. Get smarter. Okay, all right. Period. Turn your weakness into a strength. All right. It's not easy. It's hard work, and it's time consuming. Remember, success equals time plus sacrifice. Okay? So, be strong, be determined, be Cisco.